Hello.
Ethan.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Stevie from Buckcherry.
Stevie D with Buckcherry on the phone with me. Your musical career actually started to take off with a band out of Philly called Automatic Black, and you actually got to do a run with Kiss and Aerosmith. That's pretty cool.
Oh, my gosh. Wow, you did some homework.
I'm impressed.
Ethan. All right. Back, I guess with, I was a hired gun of sorts, and I had been with bands like American Pearl on Wind Up Records at the time. I had done some other bands that didn't really get to see the light of day that were on Warner Brothers or other labels. I would come in, do the album, do a tour. They would release a single, and then it would tank, and then I would move on. Automatic Black was in 2003. And, that was my introduction to, we hit the road. We were managed by Doc McGee.
Oh, wow, that's
Doc
cool.
McGee. Yeah, so that's how we got on the Kiss and Aerosmith tour. And, that was a dream come true. We were playing, like, Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, all those huge arenas. And I had only done van tours up until that point. So, it was mind blowing. I was at school every day. I'd watch their shows, learn everything I could, be a nice guy and make connections. But yeah, it was, I had made friends with Steven Tyler and Joe Perry and, Gene and Paul and all that. It was nuts. It was nuts.
Obviously, you play guitar, but out of Kiss and Aerosmith, was there somebody in one of those bands that was like your favorite to really focus on when you're watching them live on tour with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably not who you think. Joe Perry and I are born on the same day, September 10th. And I went in thinking, he's the king of cool. But the secret weapon on that whole tour was Brad Whitford for me.
Oh, wow.
I remember in the first few shows just thinking to myself, that's not Joe, that's Brad doing that solo, in Walk This Way. So it changed my mindset on because I really didn't know who did what solo, and Brad was shredding, and I couldn't believe that that he played like that, and now I know, and then I've read other interviews with other guitar players and who are big Aerosmith fans, and they're of all the same mindset, but and also. Brad is a great guitar player, but his son is an amazing guitar player too. So, and I saw both of them back in 2003, and his son was just a kid back then. So.
Wow, I never would have thought that Brad was playing some of those solos either, because when they do videos, it's never focused on Brad. It's always Joe and Steve.
No, it's always they're the focal point. They're the Toxic Twins. I guess visually, it makes for good video, but Brad, he's a powerhouse.
The one thing that kind of surprised me, I got to interview Joe Perry on his tour bus at a tour stop in Texas one time, and despite being one of the nicest guys ever, he was a lot shorter than I had imagined he would be, obviously seeing him on TV.
It's funny you say that. Like, when I met him, too, I was like, well, I always imagined, him and Steven being much taller guys,
Yeah.
And then if you look in the picture, we're like the same height. So I'm like, yeah, this is cool. Finally,
Oh, I love it.
Same thing with, I knew Angus was not a tall guy either. And I met him, and he was he was shorter than I thought. I knew he was short, but he was short. Anyway, I don't know. but still amazing guitar players, huge rock stars. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's always a little weird when you meet some of these people in person, having only seen them on TV, and it's like, wow, it's not what you expect ever for the most part. Back to Automatic Black, you were talking about being in all these non-starter bands, and Automatic Black had that great tour, but before the album was released, financial difficulties, the record never came out, so it was like another, oh crap, you in a routine here.
Yeah, that one, what happened was, it was signed to Arista, right? And just before that, Clive Davis got ousted because of some kind of old clause in the contract. Like when you hit 65, you're automatically retired. And I guess they enforced it. And so what he did is he left Arista. He was made to leave Arista, started his own label called J Records. And then he was appointed some kind of head of Universal, I can't remember, but which Arista fell under. And so he went back and shut down Arista, to spite the company. And everyone was let go. All the baby bands were let go, and all the big acts went to J Records, like Whitney Houston and Pink and all the likes of them.
Who is the moron that told Clive Davis he had to retire?
I think.
I mean, that's Clive Davis. Like, what the hell?
It's Clive Davis. I mean, he's an institution, right?
Right.
I don't know who had to tell him that. It might have been L.A. Reid. I don't know. It was so long ago, and I'm not on that side of things. I just play guitar.
Right.
And, all I knew is like, okay, you gotta find. I tried to make it work with those guys, Automatic Black, for probably 10 more months or a year, and it was just falling apart. The singer was, he had a problem with alcohol at the time, and I just couldn't be around that, struggling with him. So I moved on. And that it was kind of a blessing because I called Josh. We'd been friends for a long time, since the early 90s. And I called him and I said, yeah, I lost another record deal. And he's like, well, meet me in Texas. He was on hiatus from Buckcherry, and he had a solo band touring. And he's like, meet me, I can't remember what city it was, meet me in Texas. And I started tour managing his band at the time. And then his guitar player left, so I ended up playing guitar and tour managing at the same time. Did that for a few months, and that deal closed. So we ended up flying back to L.A., tail between our legs, and long story short, that's when I was talking to Keith at the time and Josh, who weren't talking to each other. And I was like, I got a call. I told them, I was like, hey, by the way, Keith says hi, when he didn't. And, by the way, Josh says hi, when he didn't. And then they started talking, and then they said, hey, do you want to do a show at the Key Club? And I was, and they said, do you want to play guitar? And that's how all that started.
So you really were the impetus behind the reformation of Buckcherry, who were essentially broken up at the time.
It's not been gone on record, but yeah, I was the reason.
You need to make some T-shirts that say it's Buck Stevie.
Yeah, right. Stevie Sherry. Yeah.
So, how did you know? Go ahead.
I don't know. Like the stars aligned. I don't know if I don't think I'm not the reason, but the stars aligned for all of us to get together, and it was the right lineup.
How did you know Josh? Because you knew him essentially before the first iteration of Buckcherry in the early, because they were like late '90s. So how did you and Josh meet way long ago?
We worked at a clothes store in about 91 in Venice Beach, California. And we became friends. and then roommates. And he and I lived with his sister Cassie in Hollywood, and we were out of our minds. We were early 20s, and just hell on wheels. Drinking and using, and trying to make things happen with music, but drugs and alcohol got in the way, and I really circled the drain on that one. I went down the tubes and just kind of faded off into this obscurity, and then later, probably like 97, I saw him on the road, and I was signed to Warner Brothers, and he had started Buckcherry. They were Sparrow, just turned Buckcherry, got a deal with DreamWorks, and I saw him on the road, and he was a different guy. And he was clear, he was present, and his rock game was on point, and I was like, what's different? And in a nutshell, he said he got sober. So we stayed in touch, ever since then.
Nice. Now, when you guys got back together and you ended up doing the next album with one of the biggest songs you guys have had in your career, Crazy Bitch, when you were recording Crazy Bitch, did you know or felt you had tapped into something rad? Because that song blew up where I was.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Really?
I can tell you, I'm not the one to pick singles for the album. Because when I knew it was a cool song. I mean, don't get me wrong. I absolutely knew, like, when demoing the song to recording the song, I was like, that's a really cool song. It's super different than everything that's on the radio at the time. There was a lot of pop punk on the radio, like Blink-182 and all that. And then there was a lot of Nickelback at the time. And if you would have told me that's going to be the biggest song of your career, I would have said you're crazy. And when they said this is going to be a single, I'm like, they're not going to play this. It has bitch in the title, And, lo and behold, there was a thing called MySpace at the time. And,
God, I remember MySpace.
And we posted it on there. And I was like, it was going up. The listens were going up by the tens of thousands by the hour. And I was like, I think this is broken, because it's like it's going nuts, And viral wasn't a term yet; it was just being coined, So lo and behold, within a week or two, it was at a million spins, and. I was, so we were like, well, maybe we should make a video for this. So we dug deep. We weren't funded by a major yet, So it was all 11/7, Alan Kovacs label. So we made a low budget video at what was the Key Club, which is the old Gazzari's in Hollywood, in the basement. And, the rest is history.
By the way, thank you for that video. I've watched it a number of times myself, and always a good time.
Yeah. I mean, it was cutting edge at the time,
It was, because the internet wasn't really a thing, so it wasn't going on MTV. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it was all good fun.
I remember
whirlwind.
A friend of mine had showed me, she told me, he's like, have you heard the new Buckcherry? And it had been a while that the band had been around. I said, no. And I think she played it for me on MySpace, and she goes, wait till you hear this. It's going to blow your mind. And I was working, rock radio nights at the time. And by the second guitar hit, I was like, holy hell, this is going to be huge. And I called my PD and was like, dude, you got to check this out. And like the next week, the song was being worked to radio, and we were all over it.
Yeah, that was crazy. We at the onset of everything, we had shopped the demo, and everyone had passed on us like twice. and so we went. We still had an audience in Japan. You know, Josh is the golden boy, and they didn't view us as damaged goods or old guys or anything like that. You know, and they funded the money, or they gave us the advance to make an album, and we made 15, and then we put it out, and that's when Crazy Bitch blew up, maybe within 6 months of the release, and that's when Atlantic kind of saw what was going on, and they kind of alley-ooped the whole rest of the album, you know. But
wow.
Yeah, we closed in on gold pretty quickly, and then about a year later, with Atlantic's help, we were platinum.
That's awesome.
It was a whirlwind. I can't. Like we were playing, 300 cap rooms at the beginning, and by the end, it was like we were in arenas. We were headlining arenas. It was pretty nuts.
That's pretty damn cool. And you've actually toured with some of the biggest bands in rock. Obviously, the Crew, Aerosmith, Papa Roach, which, by the way, Jacoby Shaddix is one of those great frontmen on stage. That guy just blows it away every night.
He's great. I love him.
Is there any band you haven't shared a stage with that you'd like to, like old iconic bands that you grew up with, or any newer bands that you're a fan of and want to take on a tour with you?
Let's see. I've always wanted to open for the Stones.
Yeah.
I haven't had that chance. A lot of the great rock and roll bands we've been lucky enough to play with, but like Lenny Kravitz, the band before I got in the band had toured with him, but I'd like to go on the road with him, maybe do the Stones. I'm down to jam with anybody.
Right on.
Even the Black Crowes. The Black Crowes would be fun.
Oh, I tell you what, the Black Crowes, I saw them for the first time in concert just a couple years ago, and they were so amazing on stage. I was just blown away. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Chris and Rich are just amazing. I know that they come with a lot of baggage from what I hear, but I don't give a shit. I don't have to. I really enjoy everything they've done through the years.
Yeah. Now, you are touring literally from now until the end of the year. That's a full 6 months. How in the hell do you keep up a schedule like that?
Well, we had some time off. We had a lot of time off through the end of last year through March. And then we started talking with Skid Row. And we've always, through the years, I feel like we've had similar paths in our careers, and we did tour once in Europe, and it was really great. And I thought the band sounded great together. It's a really cool bill, and so we put together a tour for this year, and it went so well. Most of them were sold out. And the bands got along great, so they booked 3 more legs. So that's basically what we're doing for the rest of the year.
Right on. July 20th here in Tampa at the Capitol Theater. Thank you so much for taking the time, Stevie. Can't wait to see you guys live. I've seen you a bunch of times already, but always one of my favorite bands. You kick ass every time, and I appreciate you calling in, bud.
Thanks, man.